morning to you all, and welcome again to the 17th edition of GPCA Annual Forum, being held for the first time in Doha. My name is Maryam Ahmed Al-Mhannadi, and I'm honored to welcome you again to the second day of the forum. Allow me to walk you through our program for the day. As part of this year's annual forum theme, Mobilizing Chemistry for Impactful Transformation, we are exploring trends that will shape the global chemical industry in the years to come. Yesterday, we had a successful start to the conference, and today we are bringing an equally interesting agenda. Today's sessions are focused on the need to champion sustainability, breakthrough ideas, and building financial and investment climate across the industry sector. Later in the day, two sessions will deep dive into the topic of industry consolidation and discuss mergers and acquisitions, finding synergies in acquisitions, and carving out cross-border transactions. The following session will talk about trade and investment of the chemical industry that align with the Sustainable Development Goals and create a sustainable and resilient and equitable companies. Before we start, I'd like to thank our speakers, session moderators, for sharing their expertise with us and their knowledge. Again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. Without their support, it would be impossible to organize this forum. Without further ado, let me introduce our first session of the day, moderated by Dr. Bernd Elser, Senior MD Global Lead for Chemicals. He manages a team of strategy, function, technology, industry, and engineering professionals as they assess the chemical organization to digitalize, automate, generate growth, and build resilience. With more than 20 years of experience, Bernd has helped companies across the industry segment to address their most challenging issues and extract value of the intersection of the business and technology. Dr. Bernd, I'd like to welcome you on stage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Probably one or the other may have wondered what a secretive title we have in the morning. Chemical industry, the hidden champion of climate change. We all know the chemical industry did great things during COVID-19. It showed its essential contributions for health and safety. But climate change, very often the discussion is focused on energy intensity. And we all know, as good engineers, you need a bit of activation energy to do all the magic, all the fantastic molecules and solutions the chemical industry is producing. So let me give you a bit of context, what we will discuss in the next close to 1 hour. So if you look at what consumers are looking for, typically more than 50% of them state their preference for environmentally friendly products. And that translates into a market for the next couple of years of more than 200 billion of sustainability-related demand. That is significant growth above GDP. And we are all aware, we're talking about battery materials, windmills, solar, and this is just the tip. There's a lot more related to that. The interesting point is, and I think that brings us a bit closer to, in quotes, the hidden champion. If you look at G2000 companies, 52% of the manufacturing companies have Scope 1 or Scope 2 commitments. If you look at the chemical industry, more than 60%. I think that already starts to show a bit what the commitment and the importance is. And I think this is also very nicely reflected here in the agenda and all the discussions which we have here on stage and during the GPCA forum. What is also interesting, a recent poll of more than 1,000 chemical executives showed that they expect a certain price premium for green solutions. Whether it's 24% more or less remains to be seen. But there's a new market emerging which links us back to the growth opportunity. So let me please invite my two distinguished panelists on stage, Peter Vanacker, CEO of LyondellBasell, and Bruce Chinn, President and CEO of I know that Peter, Bruce, probably you are highly visible leaders in the industry. You don't need an introduction, really. Nevertheless, let me share some background on you and your companies. So Peter is CEO of LyondellBasell. LyondellBasell, well known, a leader in the chemical industry, creating solutions for everyday sustainable living. It's one of the largest producers of polymers and also leader in polyolefin technologies, with operations spanning the globe and specifically also a long-standing presence here in the Middle East. Under Peter's leadership, LyondellBasell is quickly executing its strategy of growing and upgrading its core operations while meeting the demand for circular and low-carbon solutions, as well as stepping up performance and culture. So let me please give a big hand of applause for Peter. Thank you. Along Peter, we have Bruce Chinn, President and CEO of Chevron Phillips Chemical. Chevron Phillips Chemicals, one of the world's top petrochemical producers that manufactures building blocks for more than 70,000 products that improve lives worldwide. CP Chem strives to meet growing customer demand for products that make life possible and is actively working to support a circular economy focusing on plastics. It has 19 billion of assets, 31 global manufacturing and research facilities, and CP Chem aspires to be known as the employer, supplier, neighbor, and investment of choice. And CP Chem has a long history of joint ventures, investments in the Middle East, and Bruce recently has been very instrumental in the latest projects with Qatar Energy here in the United States. So also, big hand of applause.
Thank you.
So now let's get started with our content-wise discussion. Now, we saw a couple of facts and figures on sustainability-related opportunities. And Bruce, let me ask, there are lots of commitments out there from customers. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for circular, low-carbon solutions?
Well, we continue to work with all of our customers to look for those opportunities. We certainly believe that there is the potential and growing opportunity for a circular economy. But also we're focused on low-carbon footprint and low-carbon solutions to provide to customers. And we've established a target for ourselves of a 15% reduction in CO2 by 2030 based off on a 2020 baseline. And as you know, those opportunities on the circular side, it's going to take a lot of work in the value chain to get there. And whether it's not just the resin and polymer producers, but others in the value chain, that's going to take to really establish that economy. And so we're working hard at it and trying to enable that going forward.
Peter, any additional perspectives on the biggest opportunities for circular low-carbon solutions?
When I look and when we talk, with OEMs, brand owners, if you look at the 10 major brand owners in the world, they are standing for, 12% of total consumption. They all have very clear targets. And these targets are not just targets, 2030. These are targets 2025. So for them, it's more, what I hear in these discussions, it's more about, can I get these molecules and can I get them tomorrow because I have made my external commitments? So I think the time is ticking also for the entire industry to get, just like Bruce said, to get the entire value chain together, to build up these solutions for the commitments, to fulfill the commitments that those brand owners have made.
Yeah. And let me just double-click a little bit on the customer demand, and in quotes here, the markets for these products. I think we discussed already, we've got still the traditional virgin feedstock-produced materials out there. We've got the emerging market for circular solutions. How do you see the market evolving? Will that be one market with substitutes left and right, where customers immediately assume they get the same molecule, it's the same molecule for the same price? Or will we see two markets, separate market dynamics, also a separate value proposition, yeah, low carbon circular solutions versus a traditional virgin material market. How do you see the markets evolving?
Yeah, I have a true belief, and this is what our company is actually standing for, that there will be two distinct markets that are developing. So I hear a lot of premiums and gas or oil-based polymers, and there's going to be a premium on top of that. I'm saying, no, this is not how it's going to work, because the supply and demand for these circular solutions, and here I'm specifically talking about the circular solutions first, the supply and demand of circular solutions will have, for as long as I can think, 2035, its own dynamics. And it would set its own prices, and it's not going to be priced upon fossil-based plus a premium. Okay. Ruth?
Yeah, I mean, I think Peter makes a good point. It is early, I will say that. And so, you know, I'm not a betting man, so I don't know where I would place my bet. I think we've got to be playing to help develop those markets and help the downstream customers understand the value that the products bring. And when you establish that value, then you will see a market develop. You know, right now, the push is if you got virgin polyethylene, I want your circular product to be the same price. And that's not realistic right now. Yeah. And so I think that over time, the market will develop, the attributes of those circular products will be clear, and then that market and the price setting will happen around that. Right now, it's easy, I think. Easy is probably, my sales guys wouldn't agree with me, but it's much more easier to set a premium when things are in scarcity, right? But as more of it becomes available, there will be pressure, as in any markets, to really be a low-cost producer, right? And in this business where we're in a commodity business, and virgin polyethylene's been around for a long time, and supply-demand tends to set the price, and it's pegged off of particular markers in the world with respect to feedstocks. And I think we'll get there, and I think we'll get to later talking, I think, this morning about feedstocks. That's going to be a critical piece of how the circular economy develops. Yeah.
But adding to that as well, I mean, if I give a couple of examples, I mean, on one hand side, I mean, all the studies that we have done ourselves, plus also the studies that, I mean, consultants have done, they show us that there is an articulated demand for circular products of about 15 million tons by 2030. Yeah. And if you add up, I mean, all the announcements that so far have been made, extrapolate that, there's going to be a supply of 10 million tons. And that's where I base myself upon, that I say, look, there's going to be a shortness of supply. So it will have its own dynamics in terms of supply and demand. And now I bring it back to our recent final investment decision on our own technology that we have developed, the catalytic technology to, simply said, turn a polymer back into monomers, the so-called MoReTec technology. Well, when we did the final investment decision, it was based upon the fact, can we create that value? So in our business cases, a big part of the facility has been sold already, has been contracted out already, not at a premium, but actually as a separate product with its own value.
Yeah, I think that brings us a bit to the next point. I mean, if you look at the market dynamics, every forecast, including all the forecasts from consultants, predict significant growth. Significant growth. However, whenever I talk to chemical companies, converters, OEMs, they admit it's still hard. It's a lot of hard work to bring that to life. Of course, circular means new collaborations, a new business. We discussed two separate markets, so it's a lot of market development to do. Why is it so hard to develop that market at the moment? And where do you see the biggest challenges?
Yeah, of course. I mean, everybody talks about plastic waste, and but if you try to build up your new units and you try to get access, I mean, to that plastic waste, it shows that it's not that simple. Yeah. And of course, it's one thing, I mean, if our entire industry has the habit to either take gas or take naphtha as a building block within certain specifications, and you can run your facilities. Now, suddenly, you have to deal with waste that you don't know if it's going to be available what's the quality of the waste, what sorts of different plastics are in the waste, et cetera, et cetera. So our philosophy in that is, because it is so difficult, let's see it as an opportunity, and therefore go and partner with those waste companies, engage in that waste sorting, in it cleaning up of waste, et cetera, et cetera. So building hubs that are not just focused on the petrochemical part and the polymerization part, but also going upstream. Because if one doesn't have access to waste, I mean, you can't run, I mean, a big unit, I mean, a steam cracker, I mean, and don't know if your raw material is going to be there within specifications. So we need to engage with the entire value chain, otherwise it's not going to work.
I think that's still a huge challenge. I mean, if you run a 1 million ton feedstock steam cracker, and you know the average household produces 100 kilograms of plastic waste, you can think about the catchment area you need. You easily end up in tens, 20 millions of residents where you need really big metropolitan urban centers, or you've got to collect it all over the place. So I think that just shows the one of the challenges.
Clearly the waste management infrastructure is going to be key, I think, to how well the circular economy develops. And so it's going to be important for stakeholders along, beginning with households. I mean, the U.S. right now only recycles maybe 9% or less. And so there are habits that have to be changed. And then those waste management companies have to be engaged and see value in how to collect and sort. And I think Peter's is right. We have to engage in that whole stakeholder and the value chain to help enable some of that. And it's going to be a challenge and a slog to get through that. But I think if we're going to get there, we all have to be at the table, engaging and helping build that value chain so it can be resilient.
And I'm probably also personally a little bit biased because, I mean, in the country that I grew up in, Belgium, we have very good EPR schemes. And that you see, I mean, that about 60% of the plastic waste is being recycled. And not ending up and being burned, but really being recycled. So if there are, I mean, and there are good cases, not just in Belgium, but in other, I mean, European countries where these schemes work fine. So I'm saying then, okay, can we not copy with pride, and implement those things, I mean, in other regions? It's going to take time, definitely, and a lot of efforts. But at least I'm a believer that it would be possible to make it. Back to the plastic waste, I mean, when I talked about our investment on our Moritech facility, I mean, the first facility that is going to be in Germany next to our steam crackers, well, that capacity is the plastic waste of 1.2 million average German people. So you need to get continuously access to the waste of 1.2 million people. So
obviously with Cologne, you've got the catchment area, but I think if you want to scale that, it's a challenge.
Indeed.
Yeah, but you asked a question earlier about how to deal with this and build those markets, and I think the collaboration is going to be key, right, in that. And whether it's collaborating in the waste infrastructure in stream, or whether it's collaborating really in some of the low carbon solutions that also contribute to that. And I'm really proud to be working with Peter's team in kind of collaboration on electric furnace for cracking and developing that technology in a way so that we can help bring and mature that technology going forward. It's just one example of collaboration, but I think we got to have that collaboration along the whole value chain.
Absolutely.
We talked a lot about waste. Let me shift to another topic. I mean, if you look at talent and look at what's important for young people, they say purpose. Purpose is very important from entering a job, selecting a job, deciding on a career. And we all know that the chemical industry in some regions struggles massively to attract the next generation of talent. Do you think that the whole hidden champion theme, the contribution to climate change the industry can make, building up circular economy models, that it is basically an opportunity to attract new talent in the industry?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's one of the most exciting times to be in our industry. But it's up to us to really engage young people in that narrative. And we've got to be willing to share and be transparent about where those challenges and opportunities, whether it be in the circular world or low carbon challenges that are out there. We need diverse talent. We need excited young people. I was really excited to hear GPCA's focus on youth.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the secrets to increasing that pipeline of scientists and engineers and innovators that it's going to take to do that. And CP Chem's engaged in that domestically in the States by, sponsoring scholarships for young people at diverse colleges, by providing internships, but clearly exposing them to the key issues and challenges and validating their input and their ideas in that space. And I think that's going to be extremely important. We cannot really just accept, I call it the narrative that's preached in many schools about us being a dirty industry.
Yeah.
We've got to be out there telling our own story to young people, starting in basically elementary and middle schools and high schools, about we need them and we need their talents in the industry, and help them see the purpose that exists in our industry.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot agree more with what Bruce is saying, absolutely. Yeah, because it's a job that we have to do also as leaders in the industry, because we all know that today, I mean, it can be quite challenging. If you talk about chemical companies, everybody is going like, oh gosh, yeah, we're the worst, I mean, of the planet. Yeah. If you talk about chemistry, everybody is excited. Yeah, so we need to make sure, I mean, that we can attract, I mean, those young people. We bring them together, we give them the right education. And it's also by our acts. I mean, it's not just by having a well-articulated purpose. When we reinvented, let's say, our strategy for LyondellBasell, the first question that we asked ourselves is, now, what is our purpose? Yeah, is making money coming first? Or do we have a purpose, I mean, our contribution to the planet, our contribution to society? And we said, well, it's our contribution to society, and if we do it in the right way, we're going to make very good money. Yeah. Yeah, and the shareholders are going to be very happy, I mean, then also with our contributions. So it's creating sustainable solutions for everyday living. That's our purpose that we have. In addition to that, when we did the final investment decision on our first facility, it was about 1 week later that there was a fair on attracting young talent in Germany. Yeah. And we were overwhelmed. Yeah. Yeah? We had more than 1,000 young people. They wanted to go into the facilities, in the laboratories. They wanted to learn about, I mean, the company, et cetera, because it triggered something with them. And that generation needs, I mean, we need the answers, I mean, to that generation. Yeah. And it will help also, in my view, improving on a global basis also the reputation that the chemical industry has.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about excitement. I think even yesterday we had also the Olympic champion in high jump who talked about excitement, passion, and a lot of hard work. So spreading that excitement, I think we talked about own employees, we talked about the next generation talent. Maybe let's have a look at the shareholders, the investors, and what they think about that. Very often, if I talk to investors, investment banks, capital markets, they come back and say, well, it requires a lot of investment, and some of the products will be higher priced. We've got concerns on margins, etc. And there's a lot of concern on obviously share price performance and the attractiveness of that investment. So Peter, from your perspective, what's required to convince the shareholders to make sure that they also feel that excitement and that they also support that excitement?
Yeah,
what's your perspective?
We talked a lot about circular solutions and renewable solutions, I mean, at this point in time, but let there be no doubt, I mean, that plastics are needed for a sustainable future of our society, of our our planet. So, and the circular solutions are not going to replace, in the foreseeable future, the solutions that we have that are based upon oil, naphtha, gas, etc., etc. Yeah, at all, if at all, I mean, the way we look at it is that in the mature markets, maybe it's going to be up to 50% of the growth that is going to be in circular solutions. That means that, of course, also in the other solutions, we need to work hard on making them, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, making them also sustainable. Yeah, so that we have a good value proposition and not just what are the plastics being used for. And there are lots of reasons, as you also mentioned at the beginning, why we need plastics in the future. So I think that's important, first of all, to say that. And if you then look at our strategy, and you articulated at the beginning, then we said we have 3 pillars in our strategy, and it's not separate pillars that we have in the strategy, because the first one is growing and upgrading the core. That means that we continue to invest in our partnerships also in the region here in growing and upgrading that core. And the value that we are generating by growing and upgrading the core, or shifting, like in the third pillar, from cost to value creation, cost reduction to value creation, that value can be reinvested in building up that circular solution model.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think, I mean, when we articulated that at Capital Markets Day in March this year, it was extremely well received, I mean, by the shareholders. Yeah. And they know it's going to take time until that second pillar, building up profitable circular and low carbon solutions, it's going to take time. Yeah. There is no doubt about it. It's going to take time until we create sustainable value with that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm not sure I would state it any differently than Peter might have stated it. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we have owners, we have shareholders. While our structure is a little bit different than Lyondell, I don't quite get the pleasure of talking to the street the way he does. But I will tell you that return on investment will continue to be a key parameter that a part of the value that we deliver to our owners. And so we have to be responsible, safe, engaging, and profitable companies on this road to circularity and sustainability. So I won't try to repeat everything he said, but I guarantee you, whether it's a low carbon solution, we're going to have that be investment that pays back. And we're looking very hard at whether or not there's a carbon price to support that or not. We got to really look at making sure we're really smart. We believe we've got a path to our 15% reduction by 2030 that we think is achievable. And we think it's achievable. And if we get to a place where there's a carbon price support structure out there, then we'll all be better for it. But we've got to find ways to do that and be profitable along the way. And we can't throw money down a hole and just claim to be circular and claim to be low carbon and not deliver value to shareholders. It all comes with the job.
Yeah. And let me just double click on one aspect. I mean, it's easy to talk about the greenhouse gas footprint, plastic waste, investment. But I think what's often neglected is basically the whole growth opportunity out there. So there is demand, based on customer commitments. There is a new market, a new value proposition for the industry, and that will drive growth. And if we believe in all the forecasts, it will be significantly faster growing. One of the fastest growing segments is the sustainability-related demand. The windmills, the casket for batteries, and I could continue, is just a handful of examples, but there's a lot more out there. So what's your perspective? Is that market potential, that excitement for growth, which is out there, is it well enough understood?
Well, I don't know that all the shareholders that we've done a good job of being able to tell that story, but one of the things I do believe is that technology advancement has surprised all of us, right? And we as an industry have been problem solvers throughout our history, and I think that will continue to be the case. And as we deliver solutions, I think we will marry up the marketplace that's developing, and excitement will be there. I mean, if shareholders see value, the market will develop, and we'll be better off for it along the way, along that journey.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I believe that the chemical industry can do better is, of course, telling the right stories, giving the examples, and how value is also being created, not just as a chemical company, but for the entire industry. because I believe that is going to be even more important, in the future, especially if you look at everything that is going on, public opinion, regulatory environments, and of course, I might want to make the link, to the investors. Of course, our investors are seeing that. Of course, they are also listening to what is happening from a regulatory point of view or from a public opinion point of view. So we need to also make sure that that communication, the external communication that we have as leading chemical companies in our associations fits very well together with our story that we are telling, to the investors and the actions that we are taking to convince them.
Yeah. You mentioned basically the role of governments, of regulations, etc. And I think we don't have to look far to COP28, or basically the intergovernmental negotiation committees, INC3. What do you think? What is most helpful from a government perspective to bring that market to life? The opportunity is there, the customer commitments. There is a certain market mechanism at work already. What's the most convenient way and most suitable way of governments to support that transition? What's your perspective? And I think it may differ between regions.
Absolutely. There are clear paths that have been set, I think, in Western Europe around policies. Some of them are helpful, some of them are not so helpful. And I think if you take a look at the work that's going on now with INC, and I think if they focus on the fundamental things that, and Karen said it yesterday, around plastic waste, keeping it out of the environment, and having policies that support investment in waste infrastructure and collection and sorting, and they have policies that encourage mechanical recycling, advanced recycling, in other words, an all-solutions approach. I think governments will be helpful, and certainly CP Chem has been engaged through our industry associations in INC and encouraging that kind of dialogue. And I think that all of us, all of our companies have to make sure that industry is present and visible and very engaged. And I think Peter said it well. Most of us grew up in a time where all we worried about was, hey, are we good engineers? Or we go and design things that work and they provide solutions. And not many of us were storytellers. And I think we have to be storytellers to tell our narrative to not only the public, but to the governments around the world. And it's going to be very important. And to really get the policies that are really important for us going forward, whether it's anywhere along that value chain.
Yeah, when I talk to governments, I always say, please act as an enabler and not as an inhibitor. Yeah, so let's set, clear frameworks, and within those frameworks that we have enough room to maneuver. For example, don't try to define what is the right path, in terms of technology. Yeah? Let's be technology agnostic, because that's our core business. Yeah, and we have our shareholders anyhow looking at us. If we take the wrong decision in terms of technology, then we're not going to have the return on investment. So we're going to make very sure, that we have the right technology in place. In addition to that, Bruce said it very well. In the whole INC, Global Plastic Treaty, process, even if some NGOs don't like it, but we as an industry have continuously now increased our participation, and we need to even further increase, our participation as we go to INC4 and INC5 to tell our stories and to make sure that our industry is being seen in a positive daylight and not in a negative daylight, and what is the contribution that we are making, to society. And then you hear these discussions on certain alliances between certain countries on production caps, instead of, but what will happen, if we do, production caps? One need to think, at the next step. And the next step is, well, who has the money and the willingness to pay, the means to pay, will get access to plastics. So who doesn't have the means, as a consequence, will not get access to plastics, because value will continue to be optimized if there is a production cap. And who will it hit most?
Yeah.
It is those societies, we talk about environmental justice and so on, but these are those societies that will not have the that don't have the means to pay, they will not get these solutions. I mean, take the example of an electric car. There's more plastic needed in an electric car to make it sustainable, lower weight, safer. Now, the people that have the means to buy an EV car will get the plastics that go in there. But what will happen, I mean, to the people that actually need to have an EV car, which, let's say, in euro or in dollars, I mean, is 20,000. So I think we need to really think that through, and I'm very pleased, I mean, to see that there are a number of countries now, and I would say, I mean, a message also encourage even more countries, I mean, to really join that group of countries to say, look, we need plastics, I mean, for our future, because otherwise, I mean, how are we going to build up a sustainable future? Today, I mean, these countries that have aligned, I mean, on the INC3 in Nairobi, are standing already for 40% of the world population. So it's not small. So can we make that 40% maybe into 60%?
Yeah, I think the treaty presents, I think, an opportunity to be at a junction for the world, and if we land in a place where there are policies or positions in this agreement that can fundamentally affect development of people. I mean, there are billions of people that are striving to be in the middle class. There are opportunities out there. Plastics is one of the levers that really enables growth and development in countries and access to a higher standard of living. And the plastic agreement is really the opportunity to fundamentally reframe the way we produce, design, manufacture, and recycle plastics that enables that future for people. It's an important juncture, I think, for the world, and I hope we get there. And I'm starting to see some output out of that. It begins to make sense, but there's still a lot of work to be done, and we have to get away from trying to point fingers at who should pay for it versus how we enable technology to help all develop out there.
We mentioned technology a couple of times, and I know there's no more exciting time in the chemical industry when there's new technology innovation around. So for a lot of these circular low-carbon solutions, for some of them we have solutions already now. Peter, you mentioned new technologies which you're introducing in your Cologne site, but there's still a lot to be innovated. So how do we get that innovation, in quotes, done in the next decades? What's your approach to that? Peter, you want to start?
Well, I mean, of course, first of all, one needs to be open for open innovation. I mean, of course, I mean, I know it's like 15 years ago, everybody was talking about open innovation. So it hasn't gone away. On the contrary, I mean, it's even more, I mean, required, I mean, to work in open innovation. That can be, I mean, with universities, with development companies, R&D companies, but also, just like Bruce said, I mean, we have, for example, this cooperation on the e-furnace. I mean, two companies that are actually in the market competitors, but they find a way, I mean, how to cooperate, and then together with a technology company, in this case, I mean, with Technip. So these are examples where I believe, I mean, that will accelerate, I mean, and also innovation. It's also inside of the companies, I mean, how innovation is being done. When I joined, I mean, LyondellBasell, I looked at our catalytic advanced recycling technology development, and I looked at how many people were involved in that and how much time did those people spend on that project. Then you found that there were lots of people involved with 10 to 20% of their time on the project. So we said, can we not accelerate, I mean, the innovation by having people that are 100% dedicated, or at least 80+% dedicated to the project? And we substantially accelerated the development until now an FID. So it's inside of companies, I believe, I mean, a refocus, I mean, of innovation, but also, I mean, the external innovation then with universities, with peers, with players along the value chain.
Bruce, any additional
I really don't
insights
have
on
anything to add.
innovation?
He covered most of the things that I would talk about with universities and R&D companies and with partners in the value chain. So he covered it well.
Yeah, okay. When I look at the slide, there are lots of questions basically focusing on innovations, the hotspots for innovations, etc. Where do you see the most critical areas for innovation? We touched upon the processes, that's one thing. Can you shed a bit more light? What, in addition, you see as the critical pinpoints for innovation?
I think for low-carbon solutions, I do believe a big part of many of our plans is in renewable energy and renewable electricity. And I think that there are still a lot of space for continue to make progress on innovative battery selections, on innovations in infrastructure and transmission lines, and making it available to folks in industry. Nobody really likes to hear this, but this whole notion of small modular nuclear reactors and the pace that that's moving, I think makes a lot of sense, and we need to continue to innovate in those spaces to really deliver kind of low-carbon solutions and as part of the product offering that we have out there.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce said it well. I mean, it's in the low-carbon solutions, definitely these things, I mean, around the innovation on what is the renewable electricity that we're getting. Then you have the whole cluster around blue and green hydrogen. And then, of course, also the avenue that we are following, I mean, together on e-furnaces. On the other hand side, if you talk about the solutions part, so if you talk about renewable molecules based upon waste that is not plastic waste, but, for example, used cooking oils, et cetera, also in that field, I believe it helps reduce, I mean, brand owners, their greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah, I mean, with their Scope 3 emissions that they have, commitments that they have articulated. So in that field, yeah, we need innovation also to have, for example, Brassina carinata, middle crops on degraded lands that can grow, I mean, that are oil-rich. And then you have the third cluster, which is a cluster we talked a lot about, which is the advanced recycling. But let me be clear also on mechanical recycling, I mean, how to sort materials, et cetera, Also there's still a lot of, I mean, and how to do that with a low energy consumption. There's still a lot of innovation potential in my view, but definitely also on the advanced recycling. And again, I want to make the story then complete, but we need to communicate about that because there is such a perception that if you talk about advanced recycling or chemical recycling, it's pyrolysis. Yeah, and then regulators are thinking it's pyrolysis, and they think about, okay, you're burning something. Yeah. So they have something that they have heard maybe 10, 15 years ago, but the technology has advanced in such a way that you can't compare it anymore to what has been done 10, 15 years ago, which is a great thing about the chemical industry. We continue to innovate.
And I think one of the areas, if you look at that, I mean, we talked about that a couple of times already. I mean, with enough energy, you can, in quotes, break every molecule and reassemble it. Yeah, that's what chemistry is about. Yeah, and if you look at currently the required renewable energy required for net zero or low carbon solution, it's huge. Yeah, so I think that just shows we need some kind of solution to break the conundrum between we need massive electricity to basically achieve that.
In the end, it's about reliable, safe energy supply for the world. And it's going to take all kinds. We will continue to use fossil fuels. We can make fossil fuels more efficient on how we deliver those to customers out there, but it's going to take all forms of energy. I don't want anybody in this audience to believe that fossil fuels is going away, and that's what we're advocating. I mean, the fact that renewable energy is out there, it's going to really take all forms to do that. And our industry, I think, is well positioned to continue to communicate that, and then more importantly, deliver on that going forward.
We haven't talked about carbon capture and storage, I mean, yet, or at least, I mean, mentioned it. I think it's important also to mention that needs to be part of the solution, and I'm making the bridge again, I mean, to the regulatory. So I'm pleased, to see at least, that certain regions like now the European Commission is starting to actually also embrace that we need carbon capture and storage as part of the solution.
Yeah. Maybe let me just start to round it off a bit with the perspective on the GCC region. It evolved over the last decades as a hub for chemicals, petrochemicals, huge dynamics, sustainable solutions, innovations. What do you see as the role and how do you see the chemical landscape evolving in the next decades? What kind of shifts between countries do you see, and what's the role of the GCC region?
Well, I would say that I'll start off by saying we expect demand to be strong for virgin polyethylene and circular polyethylene. Okay, so there is clearly a push and will be for native materials and then circular materials. And from my point of view, this region is well positioned because it plays an important role in providing feedstocks. To that, it's well positioned because it has access to markets, whether it be Europe or Asia, to be able to deliver products to that. And we believe we're well positioned. We have a long history of partnerships here in the region that does exactly the things that I just talked about. But last but not least, I think the role this region will play is access to capital. And because certainly our partners have demonstrated the willingness to see growth, recognize growth, invest in growth, and that will continue to be important to deliver on both the products and energy needs that the world needs going forward.
Yeah, I agree, to everything, that Bruce has said. The only thing that I maybe would add is, you have a highly educated young population, and that is extremely important for our industry, to continue to grow. So tapping in those people that are excited, passionate about the chemical industry, about the potential growth that we have, that young population, very well educated, open for the world, is a huge, advantage.
It's interesting. We heard yesterday again, let me refer back to the Youth Forum discussion, a lot about hard work, passion, excitement, and it's easy to narrow down basically a location factor to raw materials. So I'm really pleased to hear basically there also the breadth of investment, talent. I think that sets the right tone also for the future. Maybe to round it off, any concluding remarks, Peter, Bruce, from your side?
Yeah, I think, we should continue to all look, very positive about the future of the chemical industry. If on the planet, as I said, we want to achieve our targets in terms of sustainability, and we need to do that because climate change is happening, no doubt about that. We see it, with a lot of evidence. Then without chemistry, it is simply impossible. But we all need together to tell the story in a better way, so that we reach, all the people that are eventually setting regulation, that we are embracing also NGOs in our discussions, so that even the NGOs, of course, we're not always going to convince them, but at least that they understand, what the contributions to society or that the chemical industry is making.
Yeah.
And by the way, my son and his girlfriend, they're both studying chemistry, so.
Well, you've been lucky. I didn't get an engineer or a chemist out of a bunch of my kids. They chose other things to do. But I would just say, first of all, I want to thank GPCA for the opportunity to be in dialogue this morning. It's good to be here in the region. It's clear the region recognizes the challenges of transformation and the role that chemistry will play in that. We're a proud partner of folks here in the region that are addressing these challenges. I want to encourage all the companies represented here to be part of the dialogue and the solution globally. For us to continue to grow, we all have to contribute to the solutions that really solve the world's problems with respect to the products that we produce and becoming a transformed industry as we go forward.
Okay. Thank you very much. I mean, we started out in the morning with a hidden champion. In the last 1 hour, we talked about the market opportunity, the growth opportunity, the excitement, the innovation potential, the ability to attract new talent. And hopefully that helped a bit, that it's not a hidden champion anymore, but the help to bring it out in the open, show the role, show the potential, and the massive contribution of the industry. With that, Peter, Bruce, big thank you, and also big thank you to the audience for all the questions, all the comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.